Andrew and Morganka. If you guys want to introduce yourselves and get started.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Morganka.
I'm Andrew, and together we will be your MCs today for our speaker series. Thank you for supporting us by being here on a Saturday morning or evening, depending on your time zone. We have a ton of wonderful speakers lined up for you today, and we hope you're as excited as we are.
This speaker series is to raise awareness for the topics surrounding educational inequity and nonprofits while helping to fundraise for Asha Cornell's projects. We are a collegiate chapter of Asha for Education, and our mission is to catalyze socioeconomic growth through providing education for underprivileged children across India. 100% of our proceeds from this event will go directly to our projects in India. This year, we continue to support 4 educational initiatives, but due to COVID-19, our in-person fundraising events are paused indefinitely. However, our projects depend on us for essential support now more than ever, especially in the aftermath of the disastrous cyclone Amphan and with the global shutdown in response to COVID. Let's give a warm welcome to the president of the Cornell chapter of Asha for Education, Ruju Dani.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. I want to start the event just by giving you a very, very brief history of what our organization is all about, just so we can start with a little perspective and continue the event, gaining so many more perspectives. So in the summer of 1991, there were a few students at UC Berkeley who got together just to think of different ways in which they could play a role in the development of India, which was their country of origin. And they shared the belief that education is crucial for socioeconomic change in India. And so basic education became their main agenda. And the group was named Asha to represent the hope that had brought these individuals together and the hope that they aimed to bring to different communities in India. So that was 1991. And since then, there have been 50 Asha chapters all around the world, including almost 1,500 plus volunteers who work to support nearly 240,000 children annually across 200 different educational initiatives in India. A year or two ago, we were also nominated as Charity Navigator's Perfect 100, which means we have a very low overhead cost, which means literally almost all of the money that we raise goes directly to our projects. And so we're really, really proud of that title. And in addition, we are completely volunteer driven, especially here at Asha Cornell, where our usual events are things like the fall concert, the spring dinner, and those are events that kind of showcase Indian culture on campus, but also raise awareness for our chapters. So we've never done anything like a virtual event before. I think this is the case for a lot of organizations, and especially not during times like these. So through this event, we hope to show off some amazing perspectives and some amazing speakers that we have lined up as we raise awareness for the work that we do as well and all that they do for their communities. So during the summer, our projects experienced some major environmental changes, including COVID and Cyclone Amphan, which was a cyclone that affected almost all of our projects, since we have currently 4 projects that are in West Bengal. And so our projects had to completely adapt their modes of education and reprioritize their responsibilities to the community, which was really inspiring to look at from our end, just to watch them kind of adapt to all of these new challenges that they were facing, and got us thinking of new ways in which we could kind of help and support them. And one way is thanking all of you for being here to kind of learn a little bit more about what are the issues that are impacting them during this time, and what could we do, what is a part that we could play in supporting that. So over the summer and continuing until now, we strive to adapt to all of these new challenges and redefine what we thought was serving and fundraising for our schools. And as an organization that funds predominantly teacher salaries and some stationery materials, we wanted to ensure that teachers were still being compensated for their work at the same kind of level that they were before all of this blew over. And so we're happy to share that as a result of all of the amazing Asha for Education donors and supporters and volunteers, no teachers in any of the Asha schools were laid off. And so we have only all of you to thank for that. But as you can imagine, we still have a lot of other work to do, and you'll hear a little bit more about the project perspective later on in the show. And so we're really proud of the ways in which we're able to serve our projects. And like I said, we only have supporters like you to thank. So if you want to play your role in the continued success of at least Asha Cornell's projects, we highly encourage you to donate through means that will be listed in the chat shortly. And that includes kind of going to our website or by Venmoing our co-treasurer, Amelia Carano. Again, all of those details will be in the chat shortly. And if you're interested in the work that we've been doing, you've been coming to our events, learning a little bit more about us, and you want to join our organization, feel free to reach out to us on social media or just send us an email, and we'd love to have you. We're completely open to all new volunteers. So thank you in advance for sharing, for coming here to hear our amazing speakers and hear them share their experiences and insights. Thank you again to all of you for attending the show. It really means the world to us. And now I want to pass the virtual stage to Malvika Narayan, who's from Cornell Model UN, CMUNC, which is our partnering organization, and she'll briefly just share what they're about. They're a big reason why this event kind of is what it is. So I'm happy to welcome Malvika.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ruju, for such a warm welcome. It is such a pleasure to be here today on behalf of the Cornell Model United Nations Conference, or CMUNC. Each year, the Cornell International Affairs Society presents this conference to hundreds of high school students across the nation and globally who attend to engage in a 4-day discussion on international affairs and global diplomacy. I quickly wanted to take a second to introduce myself. My name is Malvika Narayan, and I serve as the Secretary General for CMUNC 2021. I also wanted to introduce Akosa, who is our Director of Outreach, who has been working tirelessly with Asha at Cornell to develop our partnership this year. The Cornell Model United Nations Conference, the annual high school conference that is hosted by CAIS every year in the spring, in which we invite around 800 to 1,000 high school delegates to our campus every year. Given the circumstances brought by the pandemic, it's going to be virtual this year, but nevertheless, we are extremely excited about the progress that we've made and the developments that we are making currently to help make this an enriching experience for all of our students. The focus of the conference is access to higher education and helping to inspire students to engage in international diplomacy and relations and learn more about global affairs in the world. So I wanted to outline some of the main goals of the conference, beginning with the encouragement for students to engage in diplomacy and discussion and to see the kind of ramifications that has in a professional context. So every year we invite a keynote address speaker who demonstrates the kind of applications that students can use with international affairs in the real world and the work that they will do as professionals in their careers. It also works to expose high school students to higher education. And so we have worked tirelessly to expand and improve the reach of our financial aid program to ensure that every student who is interested in attending our conference is able to do so. And also providing campus tours and college Q&A panels for students, especially relevant to Cornell's campus if they are interested in applying here and just seeing what higher education looks like beyond high school. We also work to support the philanthropic work of a nonprofit organization that we choose each year. This year, of course, our nonprofit organization is Asha for Education, who we are working to develop a partnership with to support financially, but also to help spread awareness about the work that they do. And the last goal of CMUNC is to bring students together from all over the world, especially this year in a virtual format. We're able to host more students internationally than we ever have been before. And so part of the work that we do is to make sure that those connections and those relationships are being made at the high school level itself. I wanted to speak to the partnership that we have this year with Asha Cornell, and it's two-pronged. So the first side of it is raising awareness for the initiatives and the work that Asha does here at Cornell University. So we engage in campus-wide programming such as this event to help promote the interests of the mission and the work that Asha does. and also engaging our members on social media platforms to help spread their work to members here at Cornell and the community beyond our campus. During the conference itself, we also invite a keynote address from the president of the nonprofit organization that we partner with. So the Ruju will be speaking at our conference to help share the work that Asha does with 1,000 high school delegates. And we also have a new nonprofit committee this year, which is being run by one of our members of Secretariat to help promote the work that Asha does and allow students to have 4 days to dive into the mission and the work that Asha does in a global setting and engage with their work in an international diplomacy context. And then we also work to fundraise for our nonprofit organization, and we welcome donations from our students through a competition called Jar Wars, which is a competition to see which committee can raise the most money for our nonprofit. And we are committed to meeting Asha's 2021 India project finances and helping make sure that they're able to continue the incredible work that they do, especially now during the pandemic. And so I wanted to thank you all for your time and welcome any questions that you might have either now or you are also feel free to contact me at directly at my email here at sg@cmunc.net. Our website is also listed here should you have any additional questions that you would like to see outlined on the website. And once again, we are so excited to be working with Asha Cornell this year and are so looking forward to developing this partnership as we approach the conference. Thank you all.
Thank you for selecting us as your philanthropy organization this year. We've really enjoyed partnering with you and we look forward to connecting with you again at the 2021 CMUNC conference. So without further ado, let's kick off our speaker series. We have 7 wonderful speakers here today. We will begin our series today with Mr. Rajaraman Krishnan. Mr. Krishnan graduated in computer science from IIT Madras and UNC Chapel Hill. He worked for 6 years at the Fujitsu Network Communications, and in the year 2000, he founded Solnet Technologies, an STPI unit that was doing software development work for multiple clients. In 2006, he founded Prasas, which is an education technology startup, as well as starting up the Indian division of Dhamaka. Both companies continue to do well. In 2015, Mr. Krishnan began to work for Asha for Education, with a focus on working to improve the quality of education in government schools through the use of technology. Today, Mr. Krishnan will be speaking about the transactional model of education, referring to the notion that education is about getting a certain set of certifications, which is the reason for the pervasiveness of rote learning in India, and why few people care about primary schools not opening up after the lockdown in India. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Krishnan.
Sorry, thank you for the introductions. This is Rajaram. Can you all hear me?
I think we can hear you. Your video may not be working, but that's okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure. It was working a little earlier. I tried turning it on, so I'm not sure why there is a problem. So, okay, so let me continue. I don't want to interrupt this. So so given the set of speakers in this series, I wanted to pick a topic which was a little offbeat, but which is very relevant to education and what has been happening here in the last 1 year, especially because of this COVID. So, so this transactional model of education is what I was going to talk about. And let me just explain a little bit about what I mean by this transactional model of education. So this is probably the most common view of education. That is kind of, it's a ladder of certifications. A child completes a certain set of requirements to earn the badges of class 1, class 2, and so on. Then during the key classes of 10th and 12th, and at the end of college degrees, this certification is taken very seriously in the form of a board exam. as the certification then determines the suitability of the student for different options presented at the stage. So this is what I'm referring to as a transactional model of education. And children put the effort to get the various certifications, and getting these various certifications offers them access to different resources of the society. So whether it is access to higher education or access to a job, so these are determined by these various certifications. So basically this certification process is often like basically something that goes along with education, but the bigger problem comes when people kind of start confusing this with education itself. So the education is fundamentally about learning. So this process of certification aids us in that process, but that needs to be understood as something separate from learning. And when that becomes the primary focus and learning itself takes a backseat, we need to think twice about that. And so it has been taking deviant forms in all of India and especially in Tamil Nadu. And in the 1990s, Tamil Nadu, along with some of the other southern states, used to be considered among the better states in terms of education. Even as late as 2010, the central government conducts something called NAS, so National Achievement Survey. And in that, Tamil Nadu was one of the better states even in 2010. But so in response to the government's wishes, like the boards have constantly been dumbing down the standard of the board exams to a point where, like, it used to be some 70% of the children passing the board exams, and now it is up to about 95% of the children passing the board exam. And like when even the dumbing down of the questions was not enough, they have resorted to even more innovative means. So they have been distributing a weak children's kit, which is accessible pretty much to everyone, which has 95% of the questions in the board exam. Even the numbers are not changed. When even a number is changed, there is protest often from the parents saying that the question is out of portion. And further, if even that was deemed not sufficient, they have some system called moderation. Many state boards employ that to kind of bring the pass percentage to an acceptable level. So that acceptable level has constantly been increasing to a point where, like, now Tamil Nadu is among the worst states in terms of, so after all these things, it has brought Tamil Nadu to a point where it's among the worst states. So basically the attitude has been, who cares about education? If the students haven't learned, no problem, just pass them along. So long as this whole transactional model and the certification, and you know whom to give what degrees, education doesn't matter at all, right? Dumb it down. So what children are actually learning in these classes, and what do they actually learn in the college degrees and whatever, have taken a complete backseat in all these things. So this kind of manipulation, you would think, starts at the board exam level. It's actually worse than that. It starts right from class 1 or class 2. When I started working closely with the government school some 6 years back, I was impressed to see how high the standards of questions in the question papers were. But I was being quite naive. Actually, what was happening was these teachers just distribute these papers ahead of the exam to all the children and coach them on that. And then the children take the exam 1 week later. So this happens all the way from class 1 and 2. So basically, the teachers are happy, the parents are happy that the children are doing well in the exams. The officials are happy that the school is doing well. And like that's kind of really learning has been completely compromised. And I see this in school after school here in Tamil Nadu. And another manifestation of that, I have to say, is the whole system of reservation. So there has almost never been a demand for people to be given equal education. So this is always a demand for people to be given the equal fruits of education. So when you get educated and get a certain certification, whatever higher education or jobs that are on the offer, there is a demand for that being distributed fairly, but there is almost never a protest or a demand for equal education being provided. So education is not being provided for the underprivileged, and they get very poor quality education. So that is rarely discussed or talked about, but the protest is often about access to the fruits of these educations. So, so there are several instances of that, and I can keep going on. But one thing to realize in all these things is it's not just the government or the politicians that need to be blamed for this. It's also the people. So the people are pretty seeped in this notion of education that there is a huge resistance to any change from that. So one instance of that you can see here in India is like about 30, 40 years back, practicals were introduced for classes 10, 11, and 12. So in addition to teaching theoretical things, especially in science, so they were also tested in practicals. So they were asked to do experiments, maintain a record. But as people whoever has gone through the system would know, even some 30 years back, this was completely corrupted, right? So the records were just a sham. People were just writing what the teacher dictated or whatever. They weren't conducting experiments and writing any records. They were just copying the records from some standard record. And pretty much all the children expected to get close to full marks in the practicals, and they got it. And like this just meant that out of the overall test, 25 marks is now assured. You just have to get another 15 marks out of the remaining 75 in order to pass. So that became the idea of practical. So that was clearly not the original intent of it. So the people along with so it's not like the people weren't aware of it. It's not like any of the parents weren't aware of what was happening or the children were not aware. So it was kind of, they worked together to corrupt a system. And that kind of thing happens often. So CBSE tried to introduce some critical thinking questions in its paper. There was huge protest from the parents that these are really out of portion questions and they cannot be asked. So similar things have happened in Tamil Nadu as well. So in more recent times, during this COVID, we have really seen the worst of this transactional model of education. So as you may have been reading in news and whatever, all the efforts of the government, not just in Tamil Nadu, all over India, is about how to revive 12th standard, how to revive the board exam, how to give the degrees so that people can be qualified, quote unquote, right? So that they can be deemed qualified so that they can move on to the next stage. So the fact that no education really has taken place in the last 1 year, especially to the bottom 80 or 90% of the population, hasn't bothered people at all. You haven't seen any protests by the parents saying schools need to be reopened. So the thing is, like Asha Chennai here, our chapter, we have been working primarily, mostly with primary schools. So studies have shown that children in the primary school age group don't transmit, don't get infected as often. It's a much lower percentage. And even when they do get infected, they don't transmit the disease. So even the chance of spreading is much lower. So children in the age group 1 to 10 have not been a cause for any of the super spreader events anywhere in the world. So but the last thing, so people have opened like restaurants, temples, like buses, shops which sell hard liquor. So all these things have been opened. The only thing that still remains under lockdown is schools. Even in schools, like classes 10 and 12, they have kind of revived in some ways. So the only thing that really no one cares about opening at all is primary and middle school. And like it's not open till now, and it's unlikely to open till June. And people are, if there is a second wave that starts, this might even carry on further. So an entire generation has lost its education, and there has been very poor response, or like there has been no concern about that from the government's point of view. Even from the people's point of view, there has been no protest about opening that. See, we are working with about 65, 70 villages here. We are trying to run things. In my interaction with probably twice that number of villages, I'm only come across one village where the people in the village got together and decided to employ one educated girl in that village itself to teach the children in that village. So in India, in these villages, there is no masking, there is no social distancing. Children are all anyway out there playing with each other. So it's not like schools are going to become any worse or whatever. So they could have easily engaged some local person. Anyway, they are all interacting with each other to teach these children. Like among some 150 villages that I am aware of, only one village has done that. That kind of shows you the value for education that's there in these villages as well. So sorry for being a downer in terms of my talk. So this is something that we have to confront as people like who are working in the field of education. People's mindset need to be changed. The importance of education needs to be stressed. More meaningful education needs to be brought in. People need to engage their children in education for the sake of learning, not for the sake of certification. So when I studied in US back some 20-30 years back, there were things like you could take courses which are not for credit, and there was honor system often in exams. People could write exams in their own office room when I was doing masters or PhD. So those kind of things can absolutely not even be imagined at a circumstance like that. So we need people to kind of realize the value of education and learning, not just the process of certification. And that, I believe, is the major task in the hands of organizations like our own, Asha. So I've pretty much exhausted my 15 minutes. So I don't know about question and answer. So do I stop for question and answer now, or do we have that later?
Rajanamji, you have one question. Someone is asking, what are parents' motives to go with this model, other than the degree that it does not impart any skills to land up with jobs? Then why? If you want to take just a minute or so to quickly address that.
So see, basically, if you do well in your board exams, if you do well in your entrance exams, whatever, you get good college degrees, and good college degrees will eventually earn you jobs. So this model, like people have subscribed to that, like people are kind of haven't been thinking really about what education the children are actually getting. So there have been studies after studies, like studies have shown that some 75% of the college graduates are unemployable. They can't even speak a couple of sentences coherently. So there have been all sorts of studies, but people are, and like illiteracy and lack of education in the generation, earlier generation might also be a factor. Parents might not be equipped to evaluate the quality of the education that the children are getting. So this might be a teething problem. It might be a phase of development that we are going through, but all the same, this is not something good. This is something that we need to try and change.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Radanka?
Thank you, Mr. Krishnan. Next up, we have Dr. Michelle Harrison, an American physician, author, and academic who began volunteering for Asha in 2003, as she began splitting her life between India and the US. In 2006, she sold all of her belongings and moved to Kolkata to found Shishur Sevai, one of our current educational initiatives. Today, she'll be presenting Upon the Founder's Journey, the vision, the program, the best practices. This is the story of the founding of the Child Life Preserve Shishur Sevai in Kolkata, West Bengal, India. How do you make things happen? How do you build from an idea into a reality so that what you imagined could be done is being done? These questions and more will be answered by Dr. Harrison in this next segment of our speaker series.
Hello. And I think the video is stopped.
No, we can see you and hear you.
Can you see me?
Yep, it's perfect.
Okay, good. I can't see me, but that's okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Harrison. I'm 78 years old, and I say that because it always surprises people. But I also say that because most of you are pretty young, and that I just want to say you have a whole life ahead of you. And if you don't get to do all the things you want to when you're younger, there's lots of time. I'm a physician. I have some published books. I've been a professor, and I'm a mother of 2 kids in the US. And I love mothering. Here at She Sure Survive, we have 15 girls, and I basically mother them. So in terms of the vision, since I was a child, I used to read about orphanages. When I was in high school, I wrote an essay on the nature of life. I was a very serious kid. The nature of life, and I talked about pictures I'd seen of Korean orphans. In the US, I had one biological daughter, and then I adopted a baby from Calcutta. I was a single parent, and adoption was just about wanting or feeling like I should have or was supposed to have another child, that somewhere out there was a child waiting. And she arrived. I mean, it was a matter of going to agencies, and Cece came from India when she was 10 weeks old, and I raised her as much as I could in contact with Indian communities. But I wasn't one of those people who in my youth was saying, I want to go to India. I think I really have had no illusions about any country. And I'm here because I adopted a baby from here and raised her in the US, where she's very happy and very successful. And I wanted to do something for the children who were not adopted. And so to tell the real story, I was walking down the street in Broadway in New York in 2005, and I heard voices calling to me. And I looked around and of course knew I wasn't going to say anything. And I heard the voices of these girls calling as if from a dumpster. And I somehow had an idea of exactly where they were in India. And I said, they were yelling, help, help, come. And over the next month or so, I said, okay, I'm coming. It was also a big time of turmoil in my life. I had just been through breast cancer, and not sure, first of all, if I was going to live, and second of all, if I was going to get to do the things that I still had on my list of things I wanted to do. So anyway, in September of 2005, I heard these voices and battled with myself, decided to come. And then I remember saying, okay, how do I start? Business plan. And I wrote a business plan, December 1st. And I had been back and forth. I had been doing site visits for Asha, and my daughter and I in 2000 had come to find her orphanage and for her to be closer to her heritage, her roots, all of that. So business plan. And if I look at it today, it's very similar to what I have. I knew people both in the adoption world and in the Asha world. So I had those connections. But basically, and Cece and I had been here many times. Basically in 2005, I told my kids in the US, I'm selling everything and I'm going to India. I'm going to start a home. And Cece said to me, so what are you going to do, Ma? Just get off the airplane and say, I'm here to start an orphanage? And I said, yeah, something like that. And it was something like that. So I formed the NGO with people that I knew partly from Asha, some from the adoption world. I not much so, because in our dealings with the adoption world, we really came to see the corrupt underside of all of it. And it was tremendously disillusioning. And I think one of the reasons I ended up forming She Sure Survived. Like, somebody's got to do something for the kids who were getting nothing and for the kids who've been turned down for adoption. The next thing was to manage with the government to get children from Sukana home. I knew exactly where they were. In order to do that, I sort of understretched my background, and I came across as the sweet old lady who has some money and loves children. And then we operated what I called a stealth home, and got done really as much as we could. Education is a mess here. I mean, I would support the things that we just heard in terms of the pressure and the focus. I also wanted to challenge the notion that nothing can be done for orphans, for the truly abandoned. And I say that because what I kept hearing, even from people in NGOs, they can never be like our children. And I thought, that's absurd. They are our children. I raised one. I know lots of people who did. But in India, they're not getting a chance. Many are getting a chance at survival. But thriving, I remember even with a program I was involved with, one of the usher programs, and a board member said, well, you didn't expect our girls to compete with our children. And I said, of course I do. That's what we need to be raising them for. And I thought if I could create the model that of how something could be done, then other people would follow. In fact, I wanted to write a book on how to start an orphanage so other people wouldn't have as much trouble. And after a year or two, I realized there was probably no market for such a book. I'll also skip ahead and say, I love what I'm doing. I've never doubted it for 5 minutes. So, Child Life Preserve, She Sure Survived. I gave it an English name and a Bengali name, thinking one of them would stick. And She Sure Survived stuck much more. So we don't, our technical name includes Child Life Preserve, but we really speak of it as She Sure Survived. And we are a best practices model of an inclusive, non-institutional home for lost and abandoned girls, some with severe disabilities, all of whom had been rejected for adoption. Those were our only criteria. And I feel like we just took a mix of those children who end up in government institutions, because most of them, the NGOs won't take either, because the NGOs have to give up or they lose their funding over children when they turn 18. And I intended and have kept these children as they've started to come past 18. And our work is to prepare them for life outside with the education, the skills, and for the ones who are severely disabled, obviously to figure out how we transition to some kind of inclusive lifetime care. I started with 3 questions. Who are these children? what do they need, and can we provide what they need? I've written just a 2-page description of all of this, and if Asha would post our email, shesure.savai@gmail.com. If you just write best practices, be happy to send it to you. It's been 14 years now. We have best practices. And why do I say that? We have kids from, our youngest is now 7, severely disabled. And we have girls at class 10 and class 12 who are taking the National Institute for Open Schooling exams. One finished 10, she's in the middle of 12. In 2013, I gave up on outside education and we created Iche Dana, which is our in-house inclusive program. And to skip to later, we are planning to open in the community an inclusive play school for 2 to 4-year-olds. We have received funding for it. We were 2 weeks of opening, short of opening a year ago when lockdown started. And we're just waiting for that to lift. We too are very upset about the loss of education among the poor. Our students who are 2 years old, who were going to be coming, have simply been either locked in the house or running wild on the streets, and they've missed that very basic early education and early socialization. Our aim, and it's going to be free, our aim is to have these children on a level playing field as they move higher and enter into formal education. One of our learnings has been, and I want to say this with, in terms of Asha, we always have that struggle between, we could feed 100 kids for this, or we could put a lot of money into the small number that we have. And I guess my only answer is that we have to figure out how to do both, and people have their preferences. But on the cheap, you're not going to get the kind of accomplishments that we've been able to at least show can happen. The girls, I started them in dance very early, mostly because of self-discipline, body discipline, and they loved it. So 6 of our girls have studied with Mamta Shankar, who's a leading actress and dancer in Calcutta and internationally. And one of our girls has been chosen to be in her advanced training program and has just been told, tell your mother we need a passport because you'll be touring. With karate, they've been enrolled in the leading karate program, which means in Calcutta. So they've competed now in national karate. We've started an inclusive dance program, and they've performed on stage. They've performed at Science City, and a couple of them have gotten awards in Kalahi. We are changing their life trajectories. And it took 10 years. People expected short results, proof, evidence. One of the things that made it all possible was that it's complicated, but I was pretty much self-funded for the first few years. So I didn't have to make anything up. In other words, I had ideas that I came and tried and I thought they were brilliant and they absolutely didn't work. But I didn't have to explain that to anyone. when I decided that we would try the Toby eye tracker for our girls, or 2 girls with cerebral palsy who are intelligent, I couldn't even ask anybody for funds for it because I thought, what if it doesn't work? There were none at that time in India. We were the first customers of the Toby Dynavox to buy the eye tracking device. And so I was able to dig into my own funds and say, well, if it doesn't work, I'm just not going to even tell anybody I tried. I mean, but it gave me tremendous freedom. I will say before Shishu Savai, I helped a lot of programs, and I actually helped without requiring a lot of report returns. I've changed my thoughts about that as I've come here. And I spend a lot of time actually defending Asha and defending American money and telling programs, you need to appreciate what these people do to raise this money. They run marathons to raise this money because there is a problem of the assumption of easy money. One of our girls is a gifted artist, and we had an art show exhibition for her and also our inclusive art. So going into the future, our girls want to give back. They want to teach children like themselves. And that's part of the reasoning of opening the Children's Smart Center, because our girls will be teaching. I will be heavily involved because I want the kids to experience school as not a frightening place. We want to focus on how to learn, on abstract thinking, on problem solving, and the things that will give them broader skills than certificates do. The atmosphere around here in terms of parental pressure is horrific. A friend of mine was doing tuitions and a father was beating his 2-year-old because she couldn't memorize rhymes. So the pressure, there's a lot of work to be done with parents. We're planning with the Children's Smart Center to have regular parental meetings, maybe even add adult literacy to what we're doing. And the girls we raised are very excited to be doing this. So I think I've probably used 15 minutes. And if there are any questions and there's time, I would take them.
So there are currently no questions in the chat, but we did put the website and your email in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, you can also email them to the address we sent in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison, for such a wonderful presentation. Next up, we have Marcy Radin and Harsha Manjari Nanda. Marcy will be discussing how she got involved with Indian NGOs through her talk titled The Place for NGOs. She currently lives in Denver, Colorado, and has about 50 years worth of volunteerism. Harsha will be giving a talk titled Connecting Women and Girls Through Digital Literacy, Gender Issues and Employability Challenges in an Urban Setting. Harsha is a founding member of the Udami India Foundation. Her postgrad work centered around social work with a focus in women welfare and development. She initially worked with victims of sexual exploitation and trafficking. Later, they accepted a position as a protection officer under the Domestic Violence Act. Between 2013 to 2018, she worked with the biggest child protection network of India, running the Child Helpline number. In her talk, she'll be discussing gender discrimination and social constructs around gender, and how they continue to be a decisive factor in determining the life of women and girls in India. As such, the girls have very limited access to resources and can hardly choose for themselves, so it is important to give them an emphasis on women's education and skill training, be it rural or in an urban setting. especially for girls from a marginalized community. Please join me in welcoming Marcy and Harsha.
Hi. Okay, hold on just a moment because I can't share my screen and see the slides at the same time. So thank you very much for having this seminar, Asha and CUMC, and including us in your panel. It's an honor to participate. So, serendipitous circumstance involving my love of Bollywood movies led me to be introduced in 2015 to a local Denver, Colorado nonprofit called Shattuka. Shattuka's mission promotes the higher education, community leadership abilities, and entrepreneur potential of young girls, as well as knowledge of girls' rights and gender equality issues through women-led organizations in the major cities of India. I volunteer at both their office and for their fundraising events, as well as donate a modest amount of money. Shattuka offers its donors a guided 2-week tour to visit the grantee sites to see your donations in action, as well as to get an intimate view of India. I figured this would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. So for the January 2016 donor trip, I withdrew money from my retirement account. The visit started in Delhi, then Chennai, Mumbai, Varanasi, and Kolkata, then back to the Delhi airport for departure. A lovely young man just doing his job, guiding travelers to the boarding area, inquired of us, as he did everyone else, "So, how did you enjoy your visit to our country?" Much to his alarm, I got weak in the knees and started sobbing. "I don't want to leave." What ostensibly was the end was actually the beginning. During the trip, it hit me hard. Life is too short. I was consumed with how can I get back to India? I found a reputable course for English as a second language certification and called Shattuka's CEO to discuss the options. Which site could use me? She decided the tiny computer training school in Kolkata called Udemy might be the best one. I Skyped with Rabia, the school's director, and we agreed on 10 weeks from mid-December 2016 through February 2017. I put in my notice to retire December 1st, following my 66th birthday, and left for India on December 23rd, 2016. The first 10-week trip to Kolkata in 16-17 was followed by 12 weeks in 17-18, a heartbreaking 2 weeks in August of 2018 when Rabia, Udemy's director, died suddenly, then 8 weeks in 2019, and lastly, 8 weeks in 2020. Not being able to travel in 2021 was heartbreaking for all of us. So let's get specific. It is not possible to account for an accurate number of NGOs in India. The numbers range from several million to only hundreds of thousands registered with various government agencies. Collectively, this includes both domestic origin and foreign origin, primarily from Europe and the US. NGOs focus on the needs of a country that are not adequately met by the government. And since the establishment of religious missionary outposts in the 1800s, current NGOs in India focus now on all aspects of Indian life, from human rights and animal welfare, health, education, legal issues, and caste and gender discrimination, to technology, ecology, infrastructure, and entrepreneurship, to name a few. Currently, there are ongoing governmental requirements requested of foreign NGOs, but these are being dealt with by steady hands and practical minds. The two NGOs I'm personally connected with in the US are the aforementioned Shattuka and Udemy US, the fundraising organization supporting only Udemy India Foundation, whose primary project is the Computer Training Center for Indigent Young People who have never been exposed to computers in public education, as Mr. Krishnan spoke of, that provides skills necessary for employment opportunities otherwise not available to them. Historically, since about 2000, Shattuck had supported Udami, first in general operating expenses, then specifically its English and life skills courses, but has now withdrawn its support as UIF no longer fits within their tightly defined parameters of college education and community leadership for women only. UIF's primary mission is job skills for both young adult genders and does not focus on higher education, nor necessarily community activism, although they are now broadening their outreach in several new directions. I also have close connections with other NGOs in Calcutta. Her Future trains sex-trafficked women in fine jewelry making for employment opportunity and entrepreneurship. Shuktara provides housing for severely handicapped children abandoned on the streets. Animal People Alliance provides free veterinary services for street animals. Tajala Shed works for the rights of rag pickers. And the Anti-Hunger Squad feeds patients' family members outside of hospitals. As stated before, the opportunities for volunteers to address chronic social welfare, economic, and environmental issues are unlimited. And while there are indeed those same issues within the US and on other continents, one's own altruism has to be rooted in personal passion. Mine turned out to be India. My presence in Calcutta these last few years at UIF is not mandated, but it is generally supportive, administrative, mentoring, emotionally encouraging, and monetary. I've helped interview prospective job applicants, poured over financial audits, and advised on budgeting. I can purchase items through Amazon India for the classroom that the budget might not accommodate, or supply cash for local merchant purchases. As an elder, I can listen and empathize. Oh, here we go. And as a family member, I can always assist with medical and unexpected emergency expenses. But in the end, I always tell the staff, and Harsha will confirm this, I am not the decision maker, you are. Due to the aforementioned Indian government restrictions, Udami US is presently urging Udami India Foundation to pursue stronger domestic funding and direct international grants such as Asha, and minimize dependence on one single organization for general operating expenses. Of course, my personal support will always be there, but UIF's growth and success depends on the strength of their proven track record, their hard-earned stellar reputation. Oh God, I promise not to do this. And the dedication of their staff in maintaining a high-functioning organization. Udami Computer Training Center and Udami India Foundation have been diamonds in the rough that are shining more brilliantly with each passing year. Their past successes breed their future successes, and they are proof that NGOs have a place in the fabric of humanity. So let me, with no further ado, turn it over to my dear friend Harsha.
Thank you, Mercy, for such wonderful words and keeping faith on us. I would also like to begin by thanking the Asha Cornell team to give us this opportunity to speak. So, as Mercy said, that Udami India Foundation is a small NGO. We are located in South Kolkata in Lake Gardens area. But this organization has a history back in 1999, and it was actually founded by two American couple, Alison and Brian. And about Miss Rabia Khatun, whom Mercy mentioned in her when she was speaking, was actually the soul and the backbone of this organization, who was the first graduate, the first learner, computer learner from Alison and Brian. And she continued the organization, ran this organization for 10 strong years before her untimely demise in July 2018. So I would like to focus mainly on the vocational training that we are conducting besides other programs like working on the feminine hygiene and gender resource centers and youth development programs in other spheres. I would like to highlight on the two programs. That is, one is Uddami Computer Training Center, and the next one is the GDA courses, that the General Duty Attendant for the healthcare professionals that we are running at present. So as the discussion topic which I have chosen to speak on was how this program has impacted on the girls and how we have faced the challenges surrounding around the gender issues and also the employability challenges. So to begin with, I just want to say that all the students that we are catering to or Uddami is working with are all from the marginalized community, and they are from the urban slum areas. So we could well understand, who have a first-hand knowledge of visiting these places, that these people, they actually do not have a proper environment to even live in. And it may be a 10 by 10 room where 5 to 6 people live together. They use a common toilet which is shared by 10 to 15 families in a slum area. And mostly there is lack of environment for education, there's lack of motivation. They belong, mostly they are the first generation learner. Their parents have never gone to school, or maybe they have gone to school but have not completed their school education and have never visited the colleges. They are engaged with unorganized sector, mostly working as domestic help or a daily wage earner, or maybe a driver, taxi driver, or a helper in buses. So it is really a lot of motivation is needed, these students, to bring them to a mainstream. And as already my early two speaker, Dr. Rajaraman and Dr. Harris, they speak about the education system. And it's not solely the education system we should blame, because yes, we know there are reasons. There is a disparity in the teacher-student ratio. The infrastructure is not good. But on top of that, the place from where these children come, that is not, they do not have a congenial atmosphere and environment to pursue their studies. So hats off to all those young girls and boys who at least managed to complete their 10th grade education or the senior secondary school education and in the first year of college. So Uddami basically not working with very young girls and boys, but between the age group of 15 to 24, or maybe it could be extended in one or two cases to 30 to 35 years even. As we focus on skill training and we provide them job-oriented computer training, so we focus and take students with a basic educational qualification, because without a little school level qualification or a 10th grade or a 12th grade, you cannot apply for a proper office job. So this is one thing. And another thing is what I have already spoken about, the background from where they come. That becomes a great challenge in giving them a proper job placement. So employability has been a challenge all through. So as Marcy pointed out, that along with the vocational or the professional skill that we are imparting them, we also merge a life skills training class and a communicative English class to strengthen their capability actually. So our computer course is for 6 months, which is added by, in these 6 months, they have additionally get a 3 months of life skill training and a 3 months of spoken English training skill, which is important still in India, that if you can speak in English, your employability increases. You are accepted more in a job market. So we work on 3 spheres actually. We give them a practical job oriented computer training and also life skill training and also spoken English. So this is one thing that we do through our computer school. The other program that we run is for the healthcare professionals. So here we choose students having 10th passed their school level examination, and we prepare them to be a healthcare professional. So these are the two areas we are working with. So now, if we speak on the 15 years journey of Udami Computer School or Udami India Foundation, as we say, we have reached out to more than 860 students by these 15 years. And of them, almost above 550 are girl students. So we have reached to more than 60% of students who are girls. So we do not segregate between boys and girls because we believe that it is also equally important to work with the boys. Otherwise, who will just understand the need? We need to educate the boys to respect the women also. So it's also important to work with the boys along with the girls. So this is how we have progressed in last 15 years. But when we are talking on the gender issues, we see that when we speak of the girl child, it always comes that when a girl coming to us belongs to a bigger family, or maybe she has another two younger sisters who is younger to her, then there is always a pressure of getting her married earlier, because still in our country, still in our system, dowry is one issue which needs a lot of money during a marriage. So girl is still considered to be a burden to the family. Next, maybe it is a societal pressure that there is always a question that when your girl is young, she has attended the puberty, she has crossed the age of 16, 17, 18, people will be there, your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, everyone, there will be a pressure that the girls need to get married. So there is another pressure. Second is that we know that the way we perceive the society, the way the things, the social constructs move around the girls is that the primary responsibility of the girl is to manage the family. So her professional career becomes a secondary issue. And when we are talking about a poor family where there is limited resources, so the resources are always saved for the boy child, because as I have already mentioned, the girls are meant to get married. So she'll be going to another family, no use of investing on her education or providing her with any skills. So these are the areas where girls' education are always facing a challenge every time. So when we um, admit any girl child to Udami Computer Training Center, we for sure could able to ensure that she will not be pushed to early marriage any further, because she'll be with us for at least 6 months, will be successfully able to provide her the skill, and will try to engage her into a job so that she now gets a job, she becomes economically independent and say have a voice in her own family and could decide her own future. So this is one thing which I think we have been able to achieve through years. Next is that many of the girls, we have seen that they have changed the perspective of the people, how they think in the community. Because in last 15 years, we can give as an example many of the girls who have got the skill training and now they are standing side by side with their father or the elder brother and contributing to running of the family expenses. So she has come up as an example to all the other girls around her community, and has put her life as an example that now maybe people would think of choosing sending their girls for education, for skill training, and making them competent so that they can also have their equal footing in a family and could support their family and also could decide for their own life. Next comes when we talk about the employability challenges. So as we have said that there is a lot of work we need to do on the front of um, changing how these people think, how the girls and boys perceive themselves. First is that what we have seen that they lack a lot of confidence. Next, what also we have mentioned is that the education that they get from school is not enough, which can give them that right footing to compete in a market where there are plenty of girls and boys who would be competing with them, maybe with a good college degree, with maybe multiple college degree, where they'll have to compete and gain a job. So that was a lot of challenge for us. Secondly, these girls and boys, because of their environment, they couldn't understand or differentiate between a job and a career. So most of them, they run for easy money. And in an urban setting, instead of a fixed or a office job, there are many small jobs which are maybe seasonal or maybe time bound or maybe attached to some campaign kind of a thing. But on a daily basis, they could earn a lot of maybe some 600, 800 of rupees. So sometimes they choose to go for these seasonal jobs, which actually hampers their career. So to motivate them on that front and make them understand that you need to focus on a career and think beyond a time, which may be a timeline down 5 years or 10 years from now. Another thing which is also difficult for us, especially with the girl child, is that when I was talking about the healthcare professional job, here when they work in a hospital or in a settings, you need to work overnight also. So people working overnight is also a challenge for girls. Their family do not allow them to go out or maybe do a job which needs a longer time, or they need to come back a little late at night. So these are the challenges which we face when we work with this girl. However, I just want to give a quick um understanding on how we have been doing. So I would request somebody from Asha to go back to our slide and show the slide. So I just want to highlight on a few of the case studies that we have been successful. So can we go to the next slide? So just this is the case of Rashmi, one of the girls. Her father left them when she was only 5 years of age. She has been single-handedly grown up by her mother. And now after getting job, she and her elder sister, both a Uddami student, have now purchased a home, working with the mother. Now they have a shelter for them and also having a good earning. Next slide, please. So the next slide, this is Rashmi working in her office. The next slide, please. So this is the story of Madhumita. She also has the same background. She didn't had her mother grown up in a joint family, so she had the pressure of getting married early. She somehow managed to make her family understand. We did a lot of counseling, and now Madhumita is also successful, and she is still not married and doing well in her job. The next slide. This is the story of Neha. She is also uh, from a very underprivileged background, her mother being a domestic help, but she always was very focused and wanted to come out of this vicious cycle. After proper job training, she is now successfully working in a computer front desk job and earning well. Next slide, please. And these are the very new entrants from Udami this February 2021. Three of them very successfully, they have got a new job in Millie's Cookies, one of the cookie outlet in Kolkata. And you could see how happy and smiling face, and I hope they'll go further in their career. Next slide, please. And I just prefer to show you some of the pictures of the boys and their success stories. So these are the next slide, please. So next slide. And so these are few of the boys I just wanted to show you. that how successful you are. And the last picture where you could see Yogesh. Yogesh is quite self-made after getting training from Udemy. He has worked on himself and now is working in Dubai and earning handsomely, and is also supporting Udemy from his own capacity. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Harsha and Marcy, for such a moving talk. We've had such a great set of speakers so far. And if you're feeling inspired and want to contribute to our cause, check out our website and perhaps make a donation so we can continue to support our current educational initiatives in India.
$20 could pay for education materials, clothing, as well as a midday meal for a student for the entire year. $25 covers a month's worth of stationery supplies for an entire school. And for $50, you could pay for a teacher's entire monthly salary so that students can continue to learn. In the chat, you should soon see a link to our website and information on how to get involved through volunteering and donating directly to help support educational initiatives. Now back to our speaker series. We have several great speakers lined up for the second half of our program, and our next guest is no exception. Dr. Melial Anamalai is a veteran ASHA volunteer. Over the years, she has worked with numerous project partners across India, traveling to many rural corners and impoverished urban areas. Her current focus is on projects in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu that work with rural government schools and also education centers that empower youth groups to help their communities. Equitable access to quality education is her passion. She'll be sharing some of her experiences working with government schools in India through her presentation, The Government Schooling System in India, A Path Forward for Reform. These schools are the only option for over 90% of students in rural India, and it is imperative that they function well. Her experience with multiple projects shows us a path forward for true reform. Very excited to hear what you have for us, Dr. Anamalai. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It's a real honor to be here with so many inspiring speakers, and thank you very much for organizing this program. I just wanted to share some experiences with respect to the government or the taxpayer-funded system, which is the public system in India, and that is something that is very close to my heart. So first, a couple of numbers. Education in India today, 70% of all children go to government schools, that is publicly funded taxpayer schools. And in rural areas, 95% of them go to these schools because this is the only option for schools. So when we talk about any serious impact on education, it has to be, it has to address the issue of government schools, because we cannot kind of fund our way out of this, however many wonderful initiatives there are. And what this has ended up happening over the years is education has become a real tiered system. We have highly expensive but excellent quality schools at the very top, only accessible to the elite. And these schools don't have the problems that Rajaram and others were talking about, in the sense that the quality is great, the parents are very invested in the kids' education. Kids actually learn a lot, and they all come from there they go on to college and Ivy League institutions and so on. So the top tier don't have a problem, they can afford to pay. And then there are a whole bunch of schools for the middle classes, ranging from relatively low fees to somewhat high fees. People who can afford pay for that. And then you have the schools that are what we call government schools. That's the public school system, where you get tuition is free, you get a midday meal, you get uniforms and books, but the real quality of education leaves a lot to be desired. And this is basically everyone else. So in my own area where I grew up in Mysore, you have all of these schools. You have this top school for the wealthy, you have the middle tier school for all the children of businessmen in the area, and then you have the poorer government schools for people who are working as maids and drivers and other kinds of help who cannot afford anything else. And this kind of tier system, I think it's really bad for society. We are really underutilizing the enormous human potential that is possible. So what has the government done right in terms of the schooling system? One of the things they've done well is they really actually have a school structure in many parts of India, especially elementary school structure within 1 mile of most villages. So if you can see here a picture of a school, and this is actually a somewhat remote area in the sense when I was there, I did not have a cell phone signal at that point in this village, but there's a decent school structure. You see girls going to school and so on. So they're really focused on enrollment. So I think the government has done these things somewhat well. I mean, there's actually a school structure. But there are many, many challenges. There might be a school structure, but there might not be a teacher regularly coming for everything that needs to be taught. The teachers themselves do not get the right kind of training. They get a lot of training, but that may not be the right kind of training. There are virtually no libraries. The teachers only use one book. And this becomes a vicious cycle because you have children who go through this system maybe over the last 30 years or so, and they're the ones who end up applying for jobs to go back to teach at these schools, and they come back to teach at these schools, and then they are teaching the way they learned, which is rote memorization using only the textbook, which the government provides for free, and there's virtually no other resources to create a strong ecosystem for learning. And this is a problem, right? I mean, so again, as I was saying, we are underutilizing the potential of all of these wonderful children eager to learn to help solve their own problems in their local areas. And we just don't provide them with the schools or with the skills or the tools to do that. So Asha began working with this. So as my work on Asha over the last 2 decades, I have really focused on what can we do to help improve the public school system, because that's something really close to my heart. It is the only option for so many children, and there's so many resources being put in by the government that I feel we have to do our best to try and address this issue. So the projects we have done over the years have ranged from appointing additional teachers. If there's no science teacher in a school, we'll appoint an extra one, having a mobile science van that would tour rural areas and help demonstrate science experiments, take science equipment to schools. If the schools don't have the infrastructure to have a science lab, have a mobile library to encourage reading. And that has actually been a tremendous success. Kids are so eager to read if they could have access to books. We're now expanding on that to have libraries at children's homes in villages, more resources for teachers and more. And so my experience has generally been focused in 2 places in Karnataka and 1 place in Tamil Nadu. And so what I'm saying might not apply to all of India because there are, I think, and there are differences between regions, but by and large, I think some of the learnings that we had that I'm going to share next, I think they would apply in some form or other across the rest of India. So when we started our mobile science van visits, I mean, we were really encouraged by the motivation of the children who are interested. Here you can see a microscope carried by the science van. So we were looking to, in all of these efforts, we're looking to complement what the school already does, right? They don't have a science lab, so we'll carry a microscope to them. The science teachers might not be equipped in terms of providing real experiments for the children. They might not know how to teach by doing. They would only be teaching for the textbook. So we will help them run experiments in the classroom, as you can see in this other picture here. So we will, so it is all complementary to what the schools provide. We will provide resources that the school doesn't have, or the skills that the school teachers might not have. So that's kind of how we started this. And we began with the science van. We began lots of science related events. And here's a picture from a Pi Day event where 20 high schools in the area, in this rural area, got together to compete by participating in a science competition. And that enthusiasm was really, really heartening to see. Here, this particular one is a game that they're playing as a competition to test their skills with numbers. Another game they're playing, again, to test the skills with numbers. Yet another game, and the last one and this one are traditional games from India, once again, test the skills with numbers. So this began to be a very interesting event for the schools. So they wanted to come, they wanted to compete, they wanted the their schools to do well. So Rajaram talked about how everything is becoming so exam oriented. So this was like a complementary or a parallel system that we were able to create that motivated the schools to actually focus on learning, because you cannot pass, you cannot do well in these competitions, you cannot win prizes if you really have not understood the numbers well and how to do arithmetic well and so on. So that's one of the things that has happened from all of these efforts. We have this parallel system where there is a motivation to learn. And here is a quiz competition for high school students. And there's always great competitions teachers prepare. And it's not enough, unlike what happens in regular school, it's not enough they cannot just look at a particular question paper and prepare for it, because these are just quiz questions that we prepare and we have the quiz. So they had to really have some understanding of science concepts before they can do well in these quizzes. Science fairs, which have become very hugely popular, kids come up with their own experiments and so on. And then the mobile library, which has been particularly popular. And I was particularly so excited to meet with this teacher. She is a single teacher in a school with 66 students, classes 1 to 7. But she was really she's been really motivated for 15 years. She takes the bus to this rural village, and the last 2 miles she often has to walk. And every single child in the school borrowed a library from the mobile, borrowed a book from the mobile library. So I really had to go meet her, and it was just inspiring to see some of these teachers working under very challenging circumstances, and more pictures from the school here. So identifying these teachers as part of our parallel system, right? That's what began to give us some insight into, okay, what can we do? We can have these parallel systems which try to really provide the resources that are not available, but can we bring systemic reform into the school itself? Can we ensure that the schools will be reformed even when we are not there? Like if Asha is no longer able to support this, what would happen? Can this good work continue? And the real challenge is really governance, right? At the education department level, at the teachers level, at the community level. There is no, I mean, there are the problems of, yes, there are teacher vacancies, and yes, teacher training is not good, but the larger problem really is, I believe, governance. Decisions are made top down. It's a highly hierarchical system. It's a real sense of apathy that if you're in a government school, you're really the worst of the worst. Yes, you have a job, you get a nice salary from the government, but you really can't do much. The children are poor, the children are disadvantaged, children are often from first generation families, so first generation learners. So it doesn't, who cares, right? I don't really care. I just want to draw my salary and go on. It's an inadequate reward system and so on. So that we saw that as the kind of the larger problem. And we, as kind of an NGO or as a nonprofit coming in from the outside, we began to see what we can do. And one of the things, when we began to meet with so many teachers, when we reached out with the mobile library or the mobile science fund and so on, we began to see that there were a few teachers, I won't say all of them, but initially at least 25% of all the teachers reacted very positively. Like the teacher I was talking about in the single teacher school, where every single child in that school borrowed a book from the mobile library. So we wanted to work with these teachers to try and change the culture. Now, changing a culture in an organization is not easy, but we really wanted to try and change the culture. And we kind of went at it with we've tried to bring in two ways of thinking. I guess two seeds of change is what we wanted to put in there. One, we wanted to create a culture of learning among the teachers. So the teachers shouldn't just feel that they're taking material from the textbook or taking material from the higher ups and just regurgitating it to the children. They should be able to know what it is for themselves to learn really well, though they might have come from a post-schooling system themselves. They should understand what it is to learn really well. And then really they will be able to do the same with the students in their classrooms, and also make them independent in what they do and how they choose to learn. Because there's so much top-down stuff, like you should do this, you should do that, you should teach like this, you should teach like that. We just wanted to make them independent and respect them as individuals and treat them as equals and say, okay, your task is to ensure that your children learn well. How would you do this? I mean, this is the culture that was missing. And it was a challenge for us when we started. We said, can we really change teacher attitudes? And it turned out that we really can. So we started off by engaging with teachers as equal partners. And in terms of the science groups, we said we're going to create teachers groups so that teachers learn together. And what these groups ended up doing was it helped the teachers themselves find the fun in learning. So instead of just becoming individual entities reading from a book and then regurgitating it in class, they began to understand, oh, it's so much interesting when we start asking the question why. It's so much interesting when we start referring to these other books. So when the teachers themselves think, a lot of other things follow. In terms of cultural change, we had to go at it with the set of teachers, the 25% of the teachers who were eager to change, and from there we were able to expand because their energy becomes infectious. They begin to be seen as leaders, and they begin to get other teachers to behave differently. And as we moved on in this project and we created these teacher groups and encouraged discussion and collaboration and asking questions and break the mindset of rote memorization among these teachers, they really blossomed. I mean, the discussion groups became like in any top university. And I have been around the world in several different places, and the discussion quality was really top notch. I mean, everywhere there are wonderfully brilliant people. It's just that we don't see it. We put them in a system where they're forced to do only certain things, and that is such a loss of human potential. So we're able to bring forth their natural curiosity and have them enjoy learning. Teachers began to create their own resource material. Teachers began to create their own science labs. Teachers began to take complete ownership, like some of the pictures I was showing about Science Day events and so on. They began to take ownership of that themselves. I mean, they don't need Asha or an outside agency to come run it. They began to do this. And these are government system employees, right? They're employed by the schools. They pay handsome salaries, and they get paid a handsome salary. So in many ways, we're able to use that funding effectively, right? What the government is already spending, we're able to use it effectively by transforming the mindset of these teachers and creating a different culture in the schools. The teachers group themselves became a lobbying force for the government, saying we should do this, we should do that, we need this kind of a lab, and so on. And the other tangible outcomes for the children is that there is improved reading and writing skills. We're seeing, especially from the mobile library programs, tremendous interest in science activities. We're seeing increased interest in moving on to study science in college and so on. So we're really very excited about some of these tangible results. So we believe this is a real way forward, which is not expensive in terms of the funds we need to raise. Of course, we need the funds to start the program and so on, but we're really leveraging existing resources that the government is already spending. And we believe this has the potential to transform the system because we're changing the mindset of the teachers in the system so that if and when Asha withdraws, they are able to continue the work. And here are some pictures I have taken when I have visited and spent time with these teachers at meetings and so on. So I hope the one thing I wanted to convey here is that change is possible. We shouldn't just abandon the government school system. It is possible to work with folks within that system. And we should, because we really owe it to these bright young kids. So with that, thank you. So a couple of questions, let me just pick up here if I have time. What are the metrics to use to evaluate teachers and how are the teachers recruited for these schools? That's a good question. So these teachers this is the government recruitment process. They usually should have completed the bachelor's degree in education. The challenge is the education system has become so rotten that the colleges they go to are probably not training them to do that well and so on. So all of these problems, that's why we want to try and kind of come at it from this angle. So do you know any government initiatives? Do you know any government initiatives trying to address the quality of education? So there are government initiatives. Problem is they all get boxed into the same thing. They say, okay, we're going to talk to you about how you can teach by doing experiments. And then they say, you have to do this, this, and this. Step 1, pick up a beaker. Step 2, wash the beaker. Step 3, do this. I mean, it's completely scripted for the teachers. And I think that is the wrong approach. We really need to understand that teachers are individual folks who really have intelligence and can come up with their own ideas. They know their classrooms best. So that is really what we need to get at. And respect them as individuals. So that's what we would like to do. That how to manage the teacher-student ratio. The governments really have done a good job. That's the next question here. The governments really have done a good job. The teacher-student ratio, especially in rural areas, is not a big issue. Are there volunteering opportunities we can create for local college students in either training teachers or organizing education fairs for the schools? We do make use of local college students as much as possible, and I think bringing in the locally educated youth is hugely important, and especially when it comes to career development, like what are the different options for these children to go on after school. We are focusing on some such initiatives as well. So I think with that, at least I've quickly addressed all the questions. I'm very happy to talk about this further. If anyone wants to reach out to me, you're welcome to do so. I think there was a question on scale as well. How do we scale this? I think the scale would be, we need to figure out the key change maker, the core teachers that are in different parts of the, in different regions, and work with them. I think the final question here is, what are my views on the new education policy 2020? That's an excellent question. Everything that I've read about and everything that I've heard experts say that it's a good policy. The challenge is that, once again, it will fall into scripting, right? This is where the governance will fail. There's a nice policy, but the education official will expect the teachers to do X, Y, Z in order to implement the policy. I would like teachers to have the freedom to take the concepts in this policy and implement it or work with it the way they think is best. And that is the change we need to bring. But if it's just going to fall back into scripted sets of actions, we're not going to see any much change, even with the best policy. I think that's the end of my time, so I should hand off to the next person.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. What an informative presentation to kick off the second half of our program. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Dr. Annamalai. Next up, we have Arun Deb presenting upon the critical elements of sustainability for projects. Dr. Deb holds a PhD in civil engineering and has spent his career in the field. Currently, he's working as an independent consultant in water resources management. In addition to his accomplishments as an internationally recognized water resources management expert, Dr. Deb has worked for the last 15 years as a volunteer to provide safe drinking water to villagers of rural West Bengal. As a volunteer, he raised funds, organized research in collaboration with BESU in developing appropriate sustainable technology for arsenic removal, suitable for hand pumps of rural villagers of West Bengal. With Dr. Deb's initiative, BESU installed many arsenic removal units in various districts of rural West Bengal, organized villager support, developed village-level institutions for sustainable management for these arsenic removal units. This project is a real success and is presently continuing. We're certainly looking forward to your presentation, Dr. Deb. You have the floor.
I need the video.
I think your video's on and we can see you and your slides are being shared.
I can see the slide. I don't see the video, but okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Asha Cornell for inviting me in this seminar. All the speakers before me are interested and talked about in details about the education. But my topic is a little bit different. And since I'm an engineer and involved in water and wastewater and sanitation all my life, and my presentation is a little bit different. And we engineers do all the projects for the villages, education in the schools, water systems or community water systems, all sorts of things, but we never think about sustainability. And I'd like to talk about sustainability very quickly. And also at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the education. Next slide, please. A dictionary definition of sustainability is ability to be maintained at a certain level. So this is the definition. That means when you do a project, it starts working and it should work that way during their project life. Now, after 30 years of experience working in the villages, we came up with several criteria, several pillars, 4 pillars, in fact. One is social acceptance, use of appropriate technology, financing and financial management, and institution management. These are the 4 pillars for sustainability. Once we satisfy all these 4 pillars, then the project will be sustainable. Therefore, my thinking is that before starting this project, any project, we have to consider social acceptance, use of appropriate technology, financing and financial management, and also institution of management. Next slide, please. I'm going to show you through several projects that we have done and how we made it sustainable. Number one, 3 examples. Number one is a community water supply system in Sagor Island. Sagor Island is an island about 200 kilometers south of Kolkata in the Bay of Bengal. It has population about 250,000, and water is very scarce over there. And therefore the tube well is the only source at deep water. Then we talk about the school water and sanitation system. In schools and high schools, about 10, 15 years back, there were no water supply system. Nothing, just a simple hand pump. And also in West Bengal villages, we had a problem with arsenic removal, arsenic problem in groundwater, as well as in Bangladesh. And it started in 1995, and I at that time was in the Board of Water for People, a Denver organization, NGO, and we funded and started working with another Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology to develop a program. Next slide, please. The Sagor Island Community Water Project, it was built in 1990s, and it's a 1.5 inch well, deep 1,000 feet, and cost about $2,000. And from Water for People, we gave $2,000, and the people, local people, those who actually will use the water, they gave the labor and the cost of the shed water. They put a shed over there to protect heat from during the summer months. Water for People also trained local women as Jala Bandhu, water friend, and training them for how to repair the tube wells. And they formed also manage the users association and also pay a monthly charge for financial management. The project becomes sustainable. Next slide, please. Now this project, social acceptance, community accepted the project. They wanted the project, and it's really a bottom-up approach. We must remember this is a bottom-up approach. And all the projects should be bottom-up, not from the top down. It doesn't work in villages. And they should own the project. They should declare their ownership and willingness to pay to sustain it. Appropriate technology should be used. Tube well is an appropriate technology in that area of villages. All the time they have the tube wells, the technology is available, materials are available, and therefore this is very appropriate. Institution and capacity building, the community shall elect members from the water association, elected executive committee, and it should have about 50% women, and they will be responsible for sustainability of the project. They will run the project. They will take the money from the users, a small amount of money, open a bank account, and keep a clean, transparent bank account and run the project. And that becomes a sustainable project. Next slide, please. Now this same project, you can see this tube well, and they build themselves with excess money, some concrete benches, and it becomes a nice social meeting point. The women come over here for taking water, they gossip, they talk. That's also another good point here. Next one, please. This is a school wash project. As I mentioned before, that in last 10 or 15 years back, these schools, thousands of students, they don't have water supply, they don't have sanitation system. Very little water with 1 or 2 hand pumps. And absenteeism is rampant. And particularly the girls, adolescent girls, they do not come during the period. And huge problem. Next slide, please. We started working on Sagar Island. Again, there are 32 high schools. This school is about 1,000 to 1,500 students. And we started there, and then we extended it to Purbo Medinipur, East Medinipur district. Altogether, we completed about 70, 80 schools water system. This system consists of a source of water is groundwater, a well, a tube well, pipe well, and a submersible pump. Pump the water to overhead tank at the building, top of the building of the school. And from there, the water goes to water and sanitation fixtures, septic tanks, hand washing station, drinking water station. And also we provide a changing room for the adolescent girls and the incinerator to burn the used napkins. Next slide, please. Now, how this becomes sustainable, the school project. Social acceptance, again, there are those 4 pillars. Social acceptance is accepted by the students and also teachers. They're the main users, and they also share the cost. And ownership comes as a part of the social acceptance. 40 to 50% of the total cost of the construction even, paid by the school, so that they know that it's our money, it's our school, it's our water and wastewater sanitation system. We use appropriate technology, again, the same technology, TWL and also other things, and institution management. How would the institution to manage this water and sanitation system in school? Now, what we did here is school committee, a Watson committee, water and sanitation committee. And in each committee, 1 girl and 1 boy from each class join the committee. And also 1 or 2 teachers will be in charge of the committee. They are responsible for running this water and sanitation system, keeping it clean, and make sure that the soaps are available in the bathroom. And after using bathroom, everybody washes hand, and so on, keep it clean. And these girls, you can see over here in the picture, they have a uniform there that shows that they're part of the Watson committee. And they feel proud about it. Next slide, please. And financial management, how they get the money to maintain it. If we depend on school doesn't have any money. Government school, they don't have money to spend on water and sanitation. And therefore, what we're doing here is each student will donate each month 2 to 3 rupees a month for maintenance. If there is 1,000 students, then 3,000 students, 3,000 rupees a month. And also, we ask the teachers to pay 50 rupees a month, each teacher. And this money is kept in a separate bank account, and that Watson committee has access to this account, get the money, and maintain it properly. Next slide, please. Therefore, in this school water project, we have the social acceptance and ownership, appropriate technology, institution and capacity building, and financial management. And once it is done, the system is appropriate and system is also sustainable. And some of the projects are running 20 years in very nice condition. And benefit is less sickness now, and also improved attendance. It's a success story. Next slide, please. I'm talking now about this arsenic project, and most of you may have heard the problem arsenic is a huge problem in West Bengal villages as well as in Bangladesh. Several million people, so about 50 million people impacted in this calamity. Again, what we did here, we developed a arsenic treatment system. And we have gone through this whole thing. We raised about $10,000 and gave it to Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology. And also Lehigh University in USA was involved, and they developed a technology. That's a local technology, appropriate technology. It can be fabricated locally, and also the media used also available local. And therefore it's an appropriate technology. And once it is built, they should take the ownership. They will pay for money for running it. And they developed an institution, a community association, and also executive committee to run, raise the money and run it. They charge about 20 to 25 rupees or 30 rupees per month per family. And they take 20 liters or 25 liters of water per day from this system. Next slide, please. And they have rules also. In each system, they put a rule over here that purchase a card, arsenic-free water, collect water from this time to that time, and payment is due 5th of every month, and so on. It is written over there, and they should follow this rule. Next slide, please. It is very transparent, and in the site, it is written what is the content of arsenic in that water. And therefore, people, when they are taking water, they know what is the quality of the water. Next slide, please. Anima Ghosh is the president of the committee, Raj Vallabhpur, and she's in front of the filter in her village, and she is very proud of that village and proud of the system. Next slide, please. Now I'm talking a little bit about education, since it is education. I'm also involved with Nishtha, an organization in Baripur, and they are the women organization, NGO, and they work with, I think, about 20,000 women in various villages. And we started this program about 12 years back. We started with only 5 villages, and basically all girls education. I sincerely believe that if we can educate girls, if we can educate women, then whole country will be educated. And it is rarely found that if mother is educated, children are obviously educated, but very few places you find that children are not educated. Mother's education is very important because the children will be educated. And if mothers are all educated, then the whole country will be educated. The parents are illiterate at that time. Nobody goes to school. And we started this project, helping them to go to school. There are coaching classes and so on. Now, parents are illiterate. When they go to home, they cannot talk to the parents regarding school, regarding their education. And therefore, that's the problem. And we provided this solution. These are the classes, tuition classes. They sit in the morning or in the afternoon. They go to the courses and so on. And over and above this Nishtha, they have Balika Bahini, which is called the Girls Brigade. This consists of several thousand girls. They are aware, very aware about the social issues regarding early marriage, girls trafficking, and all these things, the social problem, cleanliness, environment. They go through all this. And therefore, these girls are totally educated, like Swami Vivekananda said, the total human being. They are growing up as a total human being. After 10 years, about 50 girls are now in college. Previously, they did not go to school. Now they are in college. And some are now teachers, nurses, engineers, social workers, and they are now big assets to the community. At the time of this COVID pandemic, they went house to house. And the Amphan storm, they went house to house, who needs what. They provided the ration, they provided the roof, they provided the wall, and all those things. They became a part and parcel of this whole community. And these are the great asset for the community. These girls are great asset for the community. Next slide, please. In summary, I'd like to mention that These 4 pillars of sustainability that I talked about, we must think before starting a project. Don't do it after the project, but do it before starting the project, and sit with them and discuss with them. We go to the village before starting project, allow them to have village meetings several times so that it comes from the bottom up. It's not top down. Always we should think about bottom up. They should consider themselves for the project and so on. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dave, for sharing your perspective and experiences with sustainability for projects. Now I ask you to all please join me in welcoming Dr. Padmanabha Sen. Dr. Sen is a volunteer by passion and researcher by profession. He wants to live in a balanced world where every life is given the same importance. For the last 15 years, Asha for Education projects gave him the opportunity to work towards that goal. He joined Asha while doing his PhD at Georgia Tech, Atlanta, and volunteered for 3 different chapters across the world. He currently lives in Dresden, Germany, and leads a research group in a German IoT institute. His current role as the Director of Projects at Asha for Education. He contributes in Asha-wide project activities, including disaster responses. Inequalities in the world, be it social or economical, are the outcomes of a segregated society. Dr. Sen will talk about the power of volunteering to solve the socioeconomic inequalities, including education inequalities. Asha for Education, being a completely volunteer-driven organization, has changed many lives, including the lives of volunteers themselves. Dr. Sen will touch upon the idea of building societal bridges, citing his own experience as a volunteer in his presentation, Building Societal Bridges Through Volunteering.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really happy to be part of this event, and thank you for the great talk so far. And I will probably present a little different overview about my journey so far in Asha for Education, and how we should build the bridges across different parts of society, and we can do that through volunteering. So just one thing, like I think this is, we first have to accept that we live in a world full of inequality. Okay, it varies from place to place. So far I have lived in many different places, and it's there everywhere, more or less. Okay, and one thing that usually causes it is poverty. Let's think about it. So poverty, this is the very well known vicious cycle of poverty. So if you are poor, you will have, you will not get a good education, and you will not get good opportunity. So finally will not get a good job for which you will not be able to be independent completely, and your dependence and insecurity will drive to another generation living in poverty, and this cycle continues unless there are interventions. Okay, the interventions can be from all of us or can be from the government. Now, how do we look at it? We can either think that everything is fine, there's not a problem. I usually think that's a little carelessly optimistic vision, that everything is fine. Sometimes if you are not in this kind of cycle or circle, we kind of think it's fine, or we live in our own bubble. And sometimes it is just it's very difficult if we kind of see all these inequalities and suffering, and we need some peace of mind. That time we have to accept that everything is fine. And of course the other side of it, which is everything is bad, nothing is going well. And sometimes that is also from pessimism, or if we are actually living the vicious cycle, we are the ones suffering. Or of course, if you are not there, but you are watching only news, and news is primarily negative news these days, so that's it. or sometimes if we see somebody on the street and we kind of remember the basic rule of humanity that if one person is not happy, it's a failure of the whole system of the society. And then we can assume that nothing is fine. Personally, I kind of continuously switch between these two. So I sometimes feel that everything is fine, or sometimes I feel nothing is fine. So finally come down with some actionable items so that we can go from the right side to the left side. And just wanted to mention one nice quote that I have read and really feel it is important this way. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? So that means I have to take care of myself. And but being only myself, what am I? So that comes the point that the society should come into picture beyond this I. And if not now, when? So I think that urgency should be there, and that's why we have to act. And now building a bridge, right? So how we can build a bridge so that there is less inequality. So let's say there are basically one side of the bridge is maybe the 10%. If you consider India, this is like 10%. If you consider some other country, it can be also 30%, 40%, 60%. But this 10% have primarily three main things. They have confidence, they have a support system, and they have a choice. Okay. And this all these things are kind of coming with that. They have quality education, opportunity, technology, parents' help, career options, and they can speak well. Okay. Whereas the other side, you have no support system. All options are primarily finance driven. There is no other choice, right? And there's a lot of insecurity. Okay. And of course, there are other things comes with it. Like, so basically, if there's no support system, you will not have good technology reach, or you cannot get good quality education. And finance driven options, just to give you an insight, if you go to rural India and if you ask students in their colleges what branch they have chosen, most of them will say either pass course or bachelor in arts. Why? Because most of the cases the arts courses have the lowest fees involved. It is nothing to do with their interest in art, but it's just because they cannot afford bachelor in science, they have to go for bachelor in arts. And this is what I'm talking about, finance driven options, beyond like losing dropping out and other things. But even after that also there is a lot of finance driven options. And I think, yeah, the rest is somewhere in the middle. They are probably on the boat crossing the river and either towards the one side or the other side. So and so that's why I think we need to build a bridge, and we have to build that bridge very sustainably. Okay. How we can do that? This is only my personal opinion. Also learned a bit from other amazing people who have been working in this field for a long time, is that we need to impart value education. Okay, so mathematics, chemistry, physics, history, geography, all is fine, but they are more for skill development. Okay, but one has to know the basic values of life. Okay, every child, every adult need to think logically, ethically, scientifically, and morally. Okay, they have to think all this, all these things have to be there. They have to have a mind that believes in equal opportunity. Whether the result is same or not is not a problem, but every child, every person should be given equal opportunity. And of course, these three things need to have a belief system that consider like the basic necessities, like at least a good education, a, let's say, decent living as fundamental rights. Okay. And thankfully means this is my, this is the third country I'm living in, and it has a very different way. Like Germany, the way Germany is dealing with the societal concept is very different than in India and US. And that's what I'm just trying to say, that it depends how a government policies can trigger this, or if the government is not following this or cannot follow it. For in a country like India with 1.3 billion people, it's very, very difficult task to do something in that scale. But if every person can follow this, maybe government policies will come out of it. Okay, that's what I think. It's first we have to work on ourselves. So all these four things are what we have to work on. Okay, and then how the society should, how our interaction to society should be. So we should, the interaction across society have to happen. Okay, and every strata should mix, so that we can feel others' pain, we can see others' suffering, so that we can know what to do. We feel urged to do it, and we have to think from a family-centric vision to society-centric vision. So where if only the people surrounding me are happy, doesn't mean the world is a happy place. It means the whole society has to be happy. And finally, so these are the things I think we all have to realize, or we have to go through a system that make us realize this. Okay, and maybe it's for the people who are already adults, they cannot go back to school, but they can learn this through their daily lives. And at least for my life, that is through volunteering. And somehow I feel that volunteering is sustainable. Go work with all the people on grassroots is very important, but everybody cannot do that. People have their different sets of challenges and their responsibilities, but volunteering is sustainable. Everybody can volunteer, everybody can find some time, and everybody can cut down their ambitious goals of other things and can invest some time in volunteering, like 5 to 10 hours a week. That's easily possible. Cut down some Netflix watching and just volunteer or do something like that. And so my journey as such have been very, I would say it was humbling experience in Asha for education, and I learned so much. Yeah, I don't want to go too much in personal domain, but it's also part of my paying it forward, because I had a very rough childhood and studied in a government aided school where the quality of education was pathetic. Teacher used to come like 30-40 minutes after the bell rings. So we needed out of school, like backup training, coaching, and all those kind of tuition. And somebody who is not related to me, because we didn't have so much of money, so somebody kind of paid for my after school tuition. And probably that always in my mind whenever I volunteer for Asha. Okay, after kind of I came out of that insecurity cycle, and then kind of become successful in my life. And that means many of us should have stories like that, where they have been helped by somebody who's not responsible for that help, and they just volunteer to help, and then we want to pay it forward. Giving it back is not possible most of the time, so we can pay it forward with more, like 2x 3x, with more intensity. And also, of course, I have to find my place in transforming lives. And of course, for me, I have to see the world beyond the same small circle of my technical. I'm more technical people, so obviously I'll be surrounded by technical people, but I have to break that and go out of that. And of course, this organization has given me many moments to cherish, like and somehow I kind of how I see myself has changed quite a bit. When I joined Asha, I used to think I'm a like a technologist researcher, and then I started running for fundraising of Asha. I become, I think, more extrovert, because there are so many events where you have to meet so many people. And then for that, I also started trekking, and then I started traveling, and then I just, that was I think my final destination. I just try to collect smile, experience different cultures, different people, and just try to collect smiles. So that's, like, it's not only we should volunteer to build the bridges, but also while volunteering, we can change completely. And that's kind of, this is just my last way, I want to show a few pictures. Actually, every picture I think should denote something. So on the top left, the picture I think is the more about the smile, right? It's I think when we are with children, we are always smile. And the second picture of the child taken in another Asha school in a very, very remote place in conflict areas. And there, this child shows me what is confidence looks like. Okay. And the one below where you see I am showing a picture that a child next to me drew. So, and that was like, like some creativity. Let's talk about it. And the last one, I think this is the crazy part, and we have to keep our craziness alive so that we can just also enjoy while doing these things. Yes, the world is difficult, there are a lot of challenges, but we should not suppress the child inside us. That we should always be the child, be a little bit crazy, a little bit confident, a little bit creative, and smile. I think with that I will stop. And if you have any questions, I have to see how to see those questions, if there are questions, but I'll be happy to answer. Okay. Okay. No, this is.
I don't think I see any questions.
Is there any questions?
I don't think I see it.
No, I think.
Okay, awesome. Well, if there's no questions, I guess.
Okay, cool.
Keep going. Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Sen. It's always great.
I think we just got a question.
Yeah, fairness and equality.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, yeah, it's a very debatable subject. For me, there should be a basic ground, like nobody should be below that. Like everybody should don't have to think about food, good education, and decent life. Now, equality for me is more equal opportunity. Everybody should have the same opportunity. And now, if the life is not fair to them, I think if everybody gets the same opportunity, and and they have been empowered with the basic tools they need to, be successful or be happy or whichever is their life goal, I think it will be fair by itself. That's what I think.
Okay, awesome. I guess if there's no more questions, we can keep moving on then. So thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Sen. It's always great to hear the story of a member of the Asha community. Last but certainly not least, in our speaker series is Dr. Sambit Saha. Sambit Saha joined Asha Cornell in 2015 and has been a project steward for the organization since that time. He lives in Vestal, New York, and works for an aerospace company as a senior principal engineer. His interests are science, literature, travel, and volunteer work for NGOs in areas relating to education, livelihood and environmental protection, and sustainability projects. He has a PhD in material science and engineering from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Today, Dr. Saha will be presenting upon education and climate change issues in rural India examined through an intersectionality perspective. The presentation will cover the work that Asha Cornell is doing in our projects, challenges faced by rural populations on education and climate change issues based on intersectionality factors such as gender and class/poverty, and practical methods of rural empowerment through education and technology. The floor is yours, Dr. Saha.
Thank you, Andrew. Actually, I'll do a screen share. So can you all see me or can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Just a second. Okay. All right. Okay. So you heard from our previous speakers, like Melli, Rajaraman, Padmanabha. They mentioned some of the things that Asha has been doing. And then, of course, our wonderful MCs, Andrew, Mriganka, and of course, Ruju also mentioned some of the work that Asha is doing.
Oh,
So
sorry to interrupt, Samit. I don't think your slides are sharing. Would you like me to do it for you?
No, I've not started sharing my screen
Oh,
yet.
okay, perfect.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll do that in a minute. Okay. So our goal is catalyzing socioeconomic change through education of underprivileged children. And in this talk, like I will focus specifically like on some of the projects that Asha Cornell particularly is involved with. Can you all see my screen right now? Can you all see my screen?
Yep, now we can.
Sure. Okay. So, okay. So let me just go to the next slide, and then probably what I can do is I'll turn off the video so that there's no distraction there. Okay. So what I wanted to tell you was there are 3 schools in the Sundarbans region in India, which is supported by Asha Cornell. And they are the Sabut Sangha KSSN school, the Digambarpur Angikar, Kishalai Niketan, and BTS Pathavan. And I will try to highlight some of the challenges faced by rural communities. And this focus, the focus of this talk will be through the lens of intersectionality, where some of the challenges will be examined. And then I will also try to put forward some solutions that we think might work. And that is going to be that is of course going to be ongoing work, and there is a lot of improvement in the things that we want to do. Okay, so like why I'm having some problem going to the next slide. Just a second, please. Ruju, can you control the slides? I'm having a problem going through some of the slides. It's not going to the next page.
Sure. No, just let me know when.
Yeah, probably. And what I want to do is go to the full screen, and actually, like say you can like also stop the video, because like some of the slides are very busy, and I don't want one corner to cover up some of the material there.
Yep, you can go ahead.
Okay, so please go to the next slide. Okay, so these are some snapshots that I've taken, and this is while visiting some of like our projects like in the Sundarbans. And so like how many of you think that this area looks anything like Ithaca? Like if you just look at the like say photograph on the left top corner. I guess none of you are going to feel that it's anything like Ithaca. It's a very different part of the world. There's some things probably that are common. It's a very peaceful like area, very tranquil. Like if you go there, like you will forget, you know, like the rest of the world. Probably sometimes that happens in Ithaca also. But then, and then like you will see farmlands, you will see cattle. So some places around Ithaca also, like I know that while like I drive from Westhill to Cornell, I can see some of the farmlands and cattle, but that's probably where, you know, like any similarity ends. Because like as you can see, this is a very like economically underdeveloped, like say, part of the world. And like say the photograph on the right bottom, that makes the thing very clear, because say like what you are seeing is like after darkness sets in, a lot of people still use a kerosene lamp to go by, and this is something like you can see poverty like everywhere. Okay, so if you go to the next slide. Okay. The Sundarbans region is important from a UN perspective for a number of reasons. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and then it's also a very important wetland. And then from the UN perspective, it's part of a world network of biosphere reserve. And this is an important thing, because unlike some World Heritage Site, like which needs to be protected, the plan is that, like say, this is a ideal location to test and demonstrate innovative approaches to sustainability. This is what is needed is like the expectation is that the place will be developed like economically, but it should be done in a sustainable way, because we have a very delicate ecosystem, and we should not do anything that that destroys the ecosystem. So as most of you know, that the Sundarbans region in India, that is famous for the Royal Bengal tiger, like it's famous for the saltwater crocodile. There are thousands of species of birds, and the fauna is amazing. And this region has been formed by like it's the largest delta in the world, like it's the largest area covered by mangrove forests. So it's a very exotic ecosystem, and we should all be doing something to protect it. It does not get as much attention like as some other regions like the Amazon rainforest, but there are, but it's a very beautiful region of the world, and it's also underdeveloped. So what the model that we should try to do, follow, is come up with a sustainable way to develop this place, and Asha is trying to do that through educating children, and so that they become the community leaders of tomorrow. And then like if we are able to come up with a good model, then that model can probably be used in other places also, like in the world, because there are a lot of other places throughout the world which are part of the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve project. Next slide, please. Okay. So the socioeconomic profile is provided like in this slide, and like say the regions, the lines which are in black, those are the regions where our 3 schools, the Asha Cornell supported schools are. So these are all blocks, so you have Mathura to Pathar Pratima and Kultali. These are the locations of our these are the blocks where our Asha Cornell supported schools are. And one thing though is the point that I would like to highlight is these this region, like on the average, has a staggering population density of 957 people per square kilometer, and about more close to 45% of the people are even below the poverty level, like in India, which has a very low threshold when it comes to defining poverty. The other challenging thing is, of course, the tropical cyclones. And there, every 3.5 years, you have a major tropical cyclone. You have maybe a minor cyclone like every 2.5 years. But so basically, like even the development is going to be somewhat difficult, and there are a lot of challenges like associated with all these things. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes about the schools that we support. These are formal schools, like primary schools. One is the Sabut Sangha KSSN school, and this is in Mathurapur 2 block. And so there are about 240 students there, of which about 35 are in the residential like program, and the remaining like our day scholars, what is called day scholars. Next, go to the next slide, please. Okay, the other one is the Digambarpur Angika school. This is in the Pathar Pratima block. This has about 272 students, 7 teachers. And then there's the third school that is called the BTS Patavavan school. That has about 208 students and like 8 teachers. So, so these are formal schools, and these are supported by Asha Cornell, and Asha Cornell mostly pays, supports the salaries of the teachers, buy some, supports them with some stationery, say purchases. And then, of course, last year when things were a little different, we also helped in rebuilding the infrastructure after after some of these schools were destroyed by Hurricane Amphan. And then, of course, a lot of the parents of these children, they lost their jobs, and we supported the teachers so that none of the teachers were laid off. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so some of our other speakers, they touched upon the education system in India. And the education system in India is badly in need of repair, and for a number of reasons. And of course, there's too much emphasis on rote learning, and the whole emphasis is on test, and that is for survival. So what happens, kids don't learn, there's no joy in learning, and say cram classes, private coaching, all these things, these are the things that abound. So education is not about learning at all. It's not about cultivating the interests of the kids, honing their skills, making them learn in a way that their skills can be applied when they grow up. And the joy of learning is completely removed from the system. So, so basically, say the cartoon, on the right, or sorry, on the left, illustrates this point where, say if you are, say in the animal kingdom, you ask a fish to show its skill, in climbing a tree, obviously the fish is going to feel very stupid about it. So, so these are some of the things probably we have to change. We should try to change, or we should do something about the system, because a lot of kids are just going to fall through the cracks, and sometimes with a country as populated as India, a lot of times people this is just accepted that kids will fall through the cracks. But if you believe that no child should be left behind, these are some things that we have to address. Okay, next slide, please, Ruju. Okay, so, and of course, when it comes to the education system, Melly already mentioned, we have a tiered, different tier system, in the education system. And so obviously, when it comes to the lowest tier, say the parents, like say of the kids themselves have never been to college. They have no idea, what good things education can do for them. Now just consider, like say a kid whose parent like is a fisherman, or is is a farm worker, and why will that person or why will the parents of such a kid be motivated to send their child to school? Now, if a kid can provide a helping hand to this to the fisherman, they will maybe the family can do with some of the extra income that kid will bring. Now, what will happen? And like say if we tell this fisherman that like you send your child to school, but then we are not sure like what's going to happen after like he spends like 8-10 years in school, whether he's going to be able to get a job or not. And it's like even getting a job in India is a very competitive process. So so why will the fisherman invest like in the kids' education, like if they don't see something good happening out of it, like in the immediate future, right? So so let's go to the next slide. And then of course, there are a lot of challenges like relating to gender. That is there like in every place like in the world. But these are some photographs that I myself took while visiting our projects. So you can see how difficult life is for the women there. Like say on the top photograph, you can see the load that this woman is carrying. I met the photograph like in the right bottom is that of a woman. She was probably like in her early 20s, and this was taken. You can see the little bundle there, and that's a child that she delivered. So so basically. And soon after delivery, like she had to go back to a job. So some of the issues relating to gender has to do with like the government inadequacies, like in supporting healthcare, and of course the social structure like is also very different, where women thought of like okay, they'll get married and what's going to like, so there's no point in investing in their like education. Next slide. Okay, and then so what I was talking about was what happens during like say normal times, and then of course like when you have tragedies like COVID and Amphan, the bottom almost like say falls out. So these are some photographs that are collected from news reports. So you can see like how difficult life became. So everything like just the bottom just fell out. Next slide. The other important thing that what is happening there is we are creating a lot of economic refugees because like of global warming. So because of rising sea levels, like seawater gets into agricultural lands, and then like it destroys the means of living of people. So so once that happens, like people like who were agricultural workers, they have to move out. And there is a wonderful documentary by Lisa Hornack and Erin Stone, and I would recommend everybody sees that, because this is global warming is an important issue for the international community. But this is also the Sundarbans is ground zero for this climate change challenge. So we are creating economic refugees. And if you go to the next slide, there's a lot of issues that happens when like when you create climate change refugees. Like first of all, like things like child labor, migrant labor, disruption of livelihoods, and then of course like other things like early girl marriages, sex trafficking, or like all those things become commonplace. And the photograph here is from a home which is run by one of the NGOs that we support. And I intentionally blurred the pictures because all the people in the photograph, these are women who were rescued from sex trafficking or were sexually abused. So, I just wanted to highlight some of the things, like the kind of conditions that exist there. Okay, next slide. So what kind of development do we want? And as we mentioned, economic development is key, but we can't bring heavy industry there because we don't want to spoil the environment. So what we should do is we should focus on integrated education, and we should try to educate the kids in a way that their education supports livelihood projects like in the community. And then we should also connect them like in a way to some markets and finance. And we should also, while supporting the kids, we should also try to support the parents or encourage the parents to participate, and maybe try also the kid to participate like in some local community development. Next. So, some of the things that we have been doing in some of our schools there. So this is the computer lab in the Sabuchsang KSSN school. And digital literacy is very important like for everybody nowadays. And basically, the school is a primary school, but then the school also has the Nayantara program. So some of the kids who graduate from the school, they can also participate in computer training. And I would like to mention even the government school there does not have a computer lab. And some of the girls that you see in the white sari, red and white sari, they are from the government school, like who have come back, who have come to this computer lab in KSSN school to get some training. So, like when, like some of the, we should also emphasize some of the vocational training, so that like at the end, like say, like after the kid graduates, they themselves will be able to apply some of the training, earn some money for themselves, and able to do something that the parents were not able to do because of the lack of education. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, then the Sabuchsanga NGO, they run a nursing training center and a teachers training institute. So both like healthcare and education are important areas, like when it comes to sustainable development. And like what we should do is like say the kids who are graduating from these schools, like we should like connect them like in a way that okay, now they are getting they can see something where, you know, like if they become a nurse, they can be a teacher, then they can come back and again contribute to the community. Next slide. Sabuchsanga also has like a bakery, and this was set up by a German NGO, and where some of the community women have been hired. And so what Sabuchsanga is doing is they have organized the women, and they have formed a cooperative. So basically, like a cooperative society which is allowing some of these women to be economically independent, and at the same time, what needs to be developed is a business model, but not just with the bakery, but with some of the agri-based, because agriculture is a big, economic driver there. So, with set up some agri-based cooperatives, like other things related to, like pisciculture. Let's go to the next slide, and there's more like that. So, the photograph on the left is about is a kid who studies in the KSSN school, and the school has given the kids some plot of land where they can try out some gardening. So and then the Sabut Sangha also is doing some development work in agriculture. So there's some agriculture, some of things that they're growing on raised beds and all that. So that is part of their community development. And then on the right, you have some, this is not connected with Sabut Sangha, but you have some shrimp farming in ponds, in Mathurapur. But I brought up these things because these are some of the community things that can be developed, and education is definitely going to be a key for development of the economy. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so on the left, you have some handicrafts. These were these art and craft items were all made by children in the KSSN school. And looking at them, it's almost like they're made by some skilled artisans. The home that I talked about, which is run by the other NGO, the Digambarpur Angikar, the women there, and some of them are many of them are teenage girls, and they are learning tailoring. So handicrafts, tailoring, the Sundarbans is a wonderful area for tourism. So if say through education, some of these industries can be developed. We can you can have economic development in a sustainable way. So the next slide. Yeah, so this is these are some photographs that were taken when I visited the school, Sabut Sangha's KSSN school, on Founders Day, and say both sports and participation in cultural events. They definitely nurture talent, and then they build confidence and teamwork. And I think that is very confidence and teamwork is necessary to build a society, and particularly when confidence is low in economic depressed regions. Next slide. This is a map, and I'll just, since we are running short of time, I'll just mention this is a map about resiliency of blocks in the Sundarbans, and which was based on some indicators, and there are different indicators there are 5 different categories, and it comes to socioeconomic, say institutional, physical, and which say these scholars from Kyoto University worked on, and based on the maps that were constructed, and you should look at the last map, the 6th one, which is a composite image. It tells you that when it comes to resiliency against cyclones, tropical cyclones, which are very common in that area, more than half the population do not have the means to cope with like an external stressor, like as the cyclone. So, and if you just, I was just looking at the map, and when like cyclone Amphan hit, it almost like it followed a textbook pattern of like say the damage that we saw was almost like followed a textbook pattern. Like of what's indicated in the map, like the areas which were the most vulnerable, that got affected the most. And this is so basically, like, I think what is important is to build like a community. Education is important, and probably, you know, like if the children who are educated, they work as social workers, they participate in local governments, some of the calamities that we are seeing can probably be avoided. Next slide. So I like to end by saying that, like, probably, you know, like we have heard that it takes a village to raise a child, but now, like in an era of digital communications, probably, you know, like it takes a global village to raise a child for sustainable development in our planet. We all have a role to play, like in this global village. Padmanabha did talk about, you know, like say why it is important for all of us to volunteer. And I think I'll end this talk by urging people to volunteer in whatever way they can. Sometimes you might think that, you know, like maybe just like it might not be that important, but when you go and visit some of the kids that we are supporting, like say every effort that we make is very, very important to the kids that we are supporting. So so with that, I'll end, and I would like to thank everybody for their time. And I think we had a lot of good discussions. I listened to the earlier speakers also. So, like I'll look forward to any questions that you have.
Thank you, Sambit, for such a wonderful talk. And big thanks to all of our other speakers today, providing us with your stories, insights, and perspectives for this event, and all the people behind the scenes at Asha for making it possible.
Thank you also to everyone who attended. We hope you're leaving the speaker series with a lot to think about, both hopeful and with a critical lens. We encourage you to get involved with this work if you can. For more information, again, feel free to head to our website or one of the other sources the tech team has put in the chat. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much.